The camera started rolling before anyone realized what was about to happen. In the center of a busy outdoor plaza, people walked past food stalls, small vendor tables, and street performers trying to catch the attention of the afternoon crowd. Among them sat an elderly man behind a simple folding table. A small banner hung in front of it. Veterans helping veterans. The man wore a faded military jacket, decorated with a few quiet patches that hinted at years of service. In front of him sat a small donation jar, a stack of pamphlets, and a handwritten sign explaining how the charity helped struggling veterans with housing and medical support. Most people passed politely, some dropped a few dollars. But that day, someone else noticed the table. Across the plaza, a young man with a phone mounted on a stabilizer whispered to the camera. "All right, guys, today's prank is going to be wild," he said with a grin. "We're testing how people react when their charity gets exposed." He pointed the camera toward the veterans table. His assistant laughed quietly behind the lens. The prankster was known online for videos that embarrassed strangers. His channel thrived on awkward confrontations, uncomfortable reactions, and viral moments that racked up millions of views. And today's target had just been chosen. He walked confidently toward the table while the camera rolled. The veteran looked up politely. "Afternoon," the old man said. The prankster leaned over the table and picked up one of the pamphlets. "So what is this?" he asked loudly. "Some kind of fake charity?" A few nearby shoppers slowed down. The veteran remained calm. "It helps veterans who fall on hard times," he replied gently. "Housing support, medical expenses, things like that." The prankster smirked at the camera. "Sounds like a scam to me." People began turning their heads now. Phones started coming out. The veteran didn't raise his voice. He simply folded his hands and said quietly, "Every dollar goes to someone who served." The prankster laughed loudly. "Oh, really? Then prove it." The moment was tense, but the elderly man didn't argue. He didn't shout. He simply sat there calmly, looking at the young man standing in front of the camera. Calm, steady. That quiet reaction irritated the prankster more than anger ever could. "So let me get this straight," the prankster said, louder, making sure the microphone caught every word. "You're asking strangers for money and we're just supposed to believe you?" A few people nearby stopped walking. The veteran nodded slowly. "People help if they want to. Nobody is forced." The prankster rolled his eyes dramatically toward the camera. "Guys, this is exactly what scammers say." His assistant snickered behind the phone. Now a small crowd had formed. Some people looked uncomfortable, others whispered to each other as they watched the situation unfold. The prankster grabbed the donation jar and held it up toward the camera. "Let's see what we've got here," he said, shaking it slightly so the coins rattled. The veteran's hand moved forward gently. "Please set that down," he said calmly. There was no anger in his voice, just quiet firmness. For a moment, the prankster hesitated. Then he laughed and placed the jar back on the table. "Oh, relax, it's just a prank." But the damage was already done. The moment had been captured on camera. A few people in the crowd were now recording with their own phones. One woman stepped closer and said softly, "You shouldn't treat him like that." The prankster ignored her. Instead, he turned back toward the veteran. "So tell me," he continued mockingly, "did you actually serve, or is that part of the act too?" The plaza grew quiet. The veteran slowly reached into his jacket and pulled out a worn photograph. It showed a younger version of himself standing beside several other soldiers. He placed it gently on the table. "I served with good men." No speech, no dramatic explanation, just that simple sentence. The prankster forced a laugh and turned back to the camera again. But the mood around him had shifted. The crowd wasn't laughing. They were watching. And within hours, when the edited clip was uploaded online, millions of people would watch too. But the prankster didn't realize something important. Among those viewers would be someone whose name carried enormous influence, someone who knew exactly what respect meant, someone named Ozzy Osbourne. And when he saw the video, he would decide to do something no one expected. By the next morning, the video was everywhere. The prankster uploaded it late the night before, confident it would be another hit. The thumbnail showed him holding the donation jar while the elderly veteran looked on quietly. The title hinted that he had exposed a suspicious charity. At first, the views climbed exactly the way he expected. Thousands, then hundreds of thousands. Within hours, the video crossed 1 million views. But something strange started happening in the comments section. The laughter he normally received wasn't there. Instead, the top comments sounded very different. "Why are you harassing an old veteran? This isn't funny. You crossed the line this time." More viewers began sharing the clip across social media platforms, but they weren't sharing it because the prank was entertaining. They were sharing it because they were angry. Clips of the moment where the prankster shook the donation jar began circulating everywhere. People pointed out the veteran's calm response, the quiet dignity he showed while being mocked in public. Meanwhile, viewers started asking questions. Does anyone know this charity? Where is this veteran located? Can we help him? The internet had completely flipped the story. Instead of becoming another viral prank success, the video had turned into something else entirely, a public backlash.
Even people who normally enjoyed prank content were criticizing the stunt. One comment quickly gained thousands of likes. "This man served his country and you humiliated him for views." The prankster noticed the shift too. At first, he laughed it off. "People are just being sensitive," he told his followers during a live stream. But the criticism kept growing. And then something even more unexpected happened. A short clip from the video began circulating on its own, just 15 seconds long. It showed the moment when the veteran placed the old photograph of his fellow soldiers on the table and quietly said, "I served with good men." That line hit people harder than anyone expected. The clip spread rapidly across the internet. Millions of people watched it. Among those viewers was someone who rarely paid attention to online drama, but this video caught his attention. The calm veteran, the mocking prankster, the uncomfortable crowd. He watched the moment twice, then he shook his head, because respect was something he valued deeply, and humiliating someone who had served the country was something he couldn't ignore. So quietly, without making a single public comment, Ozzy Osbourne reached for his phone. Not to post, not to argue, but to find out something very simple: who that veteran was and how he could help. While the internet continued arguing about the video, someone else was focused on something very different: finding the veteran. After watching the clip several times, Ozzy Osbourne wasn't interested in the prankster or the online drama. That part of the story didn't matter to him. What stayed in his mind was the calm man behind the table, the calm voice, the simple sentence, "I served with good men." It reminded him of something important: dignity. So instead of posting about it online, Ozzy did something far less visible. He asked his team to look into the charity mentioned in the video. At first, it wasn't easy to find. The prankster's video never clearly named the organization. The banner on the table was partially covered during most of the footage, and the location of the plaza wasn't obvious. But the internet had already started piecing things together. Some viewers had recognized the area in the background. Others noticed a logo on one of the pamphlets lying on the table. Slowly, the name of the small local charity began circulating online. It was a modest local charity run mostly by volunteers. Their mission was simple: helping veterans who struggled after returning to civilian life. They helped with rent payments, medical bills, and sometimes even groceries for veterans who had fallen on hard times. No big office, no massive marketing campaigns, just a few dedicated people trying to support those who once served. When Ozzy's team finally contacted the charity, they spoke with one of the volunteers. The woman on the phone sounded surprised. "Wait, you're calling about that video?" she asked carefully. "Yes," the caller replied. "We just want to understand what your organization does." The volunteer explained everything. The elderly veteran from the video had been part of the charity for years. Even in his 70s, he still spent several days a week sitting at that folding table raising donations. He never asked for recognition. He just wanted to help fellow veterans who were struggling. After the call ended, the information was passed along. Ozzy listened quietly as the details were explained. The longer he heard about the charity, the more certain he became. This wasn't about making headlines. It wasn't about proving the prankster wrong. It was about doing something meaningful. So Ozzy made a simple decision. No cameras, no announcement, no publicity. He was going to help that charity. And when the donation arrived a few days later, the volunteers would stare at the number on the screen in complete disbelief, because the mysterious donor was Ozzy Osbourne. 3 days after the viral video went viral, the small veterans charity returned to its normal routine. The internet was still debating the prank clip, but inside the modest office of the organization, life looked much simpler. 2 volunteers sorted paperwork at a worn wooden desk. A third answered phone calls from people asking how they could donate after seeing the viral video. Most of the donations were small, $10 here, $20 there, but every dollar mattered. The charity had always operated on limited resources: rent assistance for one veteran, a medical bill for another. Sometimes the money ran out faster than anyone expected. That afternoon, one of the volunteers logged into the charity's online donation system to record the latest contributions. At first, everything looked normal: $25, $50, $100. Then she refreshed the page, and suddenly she froze. The screen showed a number that didn't make sense. She leaned closer to the monitor. "Wait, that can't be right," she whispered. Another volunteer walked over. "What happened?" She pointed at the screen. The donation amount was larger than anything the charity had ever received. Not just a few $1,000s, far more. For a moment, both women thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe the system had glitched. Maybe someone had entered the wrong number. But when they opened the transaction details, the payment had already cleared. The funds were real. Attached to the donation was a short message. No long explanation, just a few words. "For the veterans, thank you for what you do." And below the message was a name. The 2 volunteers stared at it in disbelief, because the donor wasn't a corporation. It wasn't a government program. It was a person, a name recognized across the world: Ozzy Osbourne. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Finally, one of the volunteers sat down slowly. "Is this real?" she asked carefully. The other nodded. "It looks real." News of the donation spread quickly through the organization. Within minutes, the charity's director received a phone call explaining what had just happened. The massive contribution meant something incredible. They could expand their support programs. They could help more struggling veterans. They could finally fund projects that had been postponed for years due to lack of money. And the most surprising part? There had been no announcement, no press release, no social media post. Ozzy hadn't tried to take credit. He had simply seen something wrong and decided to quietly make it right. But it wouldn't stay secret for long, because when the charity eventually revealed the mysterious donor behind the life-changing gift, the internet would explode all over again. For 2 days, the charity kept the donation quiet, not because they wanted to hide it, but because they were still trying to understand how something so unexpected had happened. The volunteers continued answering calls and organizing paperwork, but the atmosphere inside the office had completely changed. Every person there knew the organization had just received the kind of support that could transform everything they were trying to do. Finally, the charity's director made a decision. The community deserved to know. So that evening, they posted a short message on the organization's social media page. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't designed to go viral, it was simply a thank you. The message explained that a generous donor had stepped forward after seeing the video of the veteran being mocked online. The donation would allow the charity to expand housing assistance and emergency support for struggling veterans. At the bottom of the post, they included the name of the donor: Ozzy Osbourne. Within minutes, the post began spreading across the internet. At first, people thought it might be fake, but then reporters started confirming it. Fans began sharing the story everywhere. What made the moment so powerful wasn't just the size of the donation, it was the fact that Ozzy had never announced it himself. He hadn't posted about the video, he hadn't criticized the prankster, he hadn't tried to turn the situation into publicity. He had simply helped. The story spread faster than the original prank video ever had. Headlines started appearing online. Ozzy Osbourne secretly donates to veteran charity after viral prank video. People who had watched the clip earlier suddenly saw the story in a completely different way. What began as an uncomfortable prank had turned into something meaningful. Meanwhile, the prankster woke up the next morning to a flood of notifications. His phone was buzzing non-stop. At first, he assumed the video had finally exploded in popularity, but when he opened the messages, the tone was very different. People weren't praising his prank anymore. They were sharing a new headline, and every single one included the same name, Ozzy Osbourne. The prankster stared at the screen in silence, because now the internet wasn't talking about his video, they were talking about what happened after it, and the contrast between the two stories couldn't be clearer. The prankster's world changed almost overnight. His social media notifications were flooded with messages he didn't expect. Thousands of comments criticized him for humiliating a veteran. Sponsors started reaching out cautiously or not at all, concerned about being associated with the backlash. Even fellow content creators posted subtle reminders that some lines shouldn't be crossed. The viral video he had intended to be funny had completely backfired. The attention he received wasn't praise, it was judgment. And all eyes weren't on him anymore. They were on the veteran he had mocked and the unexpected hero who had quietly changed everything. Meanwhile, the elderly veteran and the charity continued their work, now with resources they had only dreamed of before. New programs were funded, more veterans received help with medical bills, rent, and basic necessities. The donation didn't just make a difference, it multiplied it. The elderly veteran himself was overwhelmed. When the charity revealed who the donor was, he couldn't believe it. For years, he had quietly devoted his time to helping others without ever seeking attention. Now, someone